now. Thank you all for coming. And Zhidong, you have 50 minutes, and then we'll ask questions after.
Okay.
Clarification questions during.
Sure. Thank you very much for being here. So first, I want to adjust your expectation a little bit. So this search paper, as you will see, I'm not going to offer you a new search model. So in that aspect, it's not that creative. And instead, it's like a comparative static analysis exercise based on some well-known search model, perhaps more useful for when you teach the Varinsky or Anderson-Reynolds model to your student. So it will be relatively short. So here are the motivations. So like during the past 2 decades or so, consumers have experienced significantly improved information environment in their shopping process, mainly due to the introduction of the online platforms. So consumers are easier to find the sellers in the sense that they can save some search costs, and they can encounter more relevant products first in their shopping process because of either like a personalized recommendations, or they can filter the products they are browsing on the website, or they receive the targeted ads and so on. And in some situations, when they inspect a product, they will also learn more informative signals, for example, due to better display technology, like the virtual reality shopping technology, or the platform or website are offering more and more customer reviews, so you can learn more information about the product you may buy. And in this paper, I will mainly focus on these two: encounter more relevant products first, and the product inspection will become more informative instead of the first one, reducing the search cost, because we all understand what's the consequence of reducing the search cost in the standard case, okay? So we will try to investigate how will improve the information affect a search market, mainly try to answer these 3 questions. Will consumers search longer or shorter in a search market with better information? Will firms compete less or more intensely? Will consumers always benefit from improved information? And we are going to study these questions in the very standard now, the Varinsky, Anderson, and the Reynolds framework. I'm going to call it the WAR model, or the WAR framework. I think that's perhaps the most natural framework to answer those questions, because we needed to introduce some product differentiation, so that you can learn some product information. If you consider the search model with homogeneous product, it seems not very natural for answering these questions. And although in this paper, the information improvement will be exogenous, but you can certainly imagine if you want to endogenize the information improvement by some platforms. These 3 questions are also relevant. For example, if the platform mainly make money from per-click fees, like search engine, then you may want consumer to search longer. In that case, the first question is relevant. If the platform mainly makes money from like a percentage commission fee from sellers, then you may want to soften the price competition to some extent. Then the second question becomes more relevant. If a platform is facing strong competition from another platform, then it's perhaps important to attract the consumer to visit your platform at the first place. In that case, the third question may become relevant, okay? But again, in this paper, I'm not going to endogenize the information improvement. It will be exogenous. Okay. I will just jump to the model. I will mention some related paper as the talk goes on. Okay? So I'm going to use the limited version of the War framework in the sense that I'm going to assume a continuum of firms. Okay? And each of them supply a differentiated product at zero cost. Okay? And they set prices simultaneously, and it's a one-shot game. Okay? I think here, basically, everybody is familiar with this Warinsky-Anderson-Reynolds framework. So I'm presenting in a not very vigorous way, but if you have any questions, you can just ask. And we also have a continuum of consumers. Each want to buy at most one of the products. And they also have a unit demand if they want to buy one product. Okay? And the measure of consumer per firm is normalized to 1. And a product's match utility for a consumer is denoted by some random variable x. And this x has a CDF hx. Okay? And we assume the realization of this match utility is IID across consumers and products. Okay? So essentially, there's no systematic quality difference across firms here. And the consumers have a zero outside option. And the consumers will search sequentially to learn both prices and match utilities. Of course, nowadays, in many situations, especially in some platforms, price information may become easier for consumer to gather than product information. So an alternative setup would be, consumer may observe prices, but they still need to inspect the products, like some work Teddy did before. But here I'm going to still focus on the standard, the War framework. You need to learn both prices and match utility by searching. Okay. And the random search order, the unit search cost is some number S. Okay. And we focus on symmetric equilibrium with active consumer participation. So this is just the baseline framework I'm going to use. Now I'm going to talk about how to model improved information in this framework. Okay. You can interrupt me anytime if you want. Okay. So how to model more informative inspection. So the pretty standard way is that, a consumer will learn a signal of the true match utility of a product at each visit instead of the true match utility directly. I only learn a signal. Okay? And a typical example people use in the literature, at least before the Bayesian persuasion literature, is the truth or noise signal structure. So with probability theta, my signal is equal to the true match utility. Otherwise, my signal is a pure noise. Okay? And after seeing the signal, I'm going to estimate the expected match utility, which takes this form. Here, mu is the mean of the true match utility. Then you can calculate, what's the perceived match utility distribution in this market? Ex-ante. Because now consumers know that, my signal is not perfect. So basically, I'm facing this effective match utility or expected match utility distribution in the market. And it's obvious that, when the theta, the probability of the precision goes up, or the precision goes up, this distribution will increase or become more dispersed in the sense of mean preserving spread. Okay? So from this truth or noise example. But we also know that this is generally true as long as the signal becomes more informative in the standard Blackwell sense. Okay? So to model more informative inspection, a general way is to assume that, now the distribution becomes a mean preserving spread of the benchmark one. Okay? And of course, this is the information story, but this is also related to some product design story, like in the Heskey's paper before. You can either produce a mass product or niche product that's captured by some rotation of the distribution. That's a special case of the mean preserving spread. Okay. So this is the way I'm going to model more informative inspection by using the mean preserving spread. And how to model encountering more relevant products first. Let me start with a truncation example, which is a setup used in a few papers, such as Deconia in studying search advertising, which I will mention again later toward the end of the talk, or the paper by Zhou about the personalized recommendation in the search market by a platform. Okay? So they assume basically a product will be displayed to a consumer or recommended to a consumer if and only if its match utility is above some certain threshold. Basically, it's assumed, oh, the platform has lots of information about the consumer, so they know the consumer's true variation for that product, so I can control which product to be displayed to that consumer, okay, in that sense. Then for consumer, if consumers know that the platform is using this strategy to recommend the product, then my perceived match utility distribution in that market will be this one. It's a truncated version of the original distribution. Okay? And in this case, when the threshold goes up, this perceived match utility distribution will increase in the sense of first order stochastic dominance. Okay? And a very similar setup also works for filtering with elimination by aspects, in the sense that, oh, if a product has two attributes and the consumer will filter the product, available product by attribute 1 first. I will only look at the products whose attribute 1 is greater than some level. Okay, I will ignore all other products. So that's filtering with elimination by aspect, like a popular procedure considered by a psychologist, for example. Yeah, that will give you a very similar perceived match utility distribution. Okay, also first order stochastic dominance. And this is generally true if a better matched products appear or will be recommended more likely. For example, a product with match utility X will be recommended with probability rho X, and the rho X is an increasing function. Then the perceived match utility distribution for consumers will be a first order stochastic dominance of the original one. Yeah? But here, a very big assumption is that those recommended products are not ranked. So they are still randomly displayed. Okay, and they are not ranked. If we consider ranked products, the problem could become much more complicated, especially if the number of products is finite. You can imagine if the number of products is finite, a platform will recommend the top 10 products, okay? And perhaps they will be ranked, but probably not perfectly, okay? Then those perceived match utility distribution across those top 10 products will become correlated. That will make the search problem much harder. Actually, initially, I want to solve that problem, but I didn't make much progress. That's why I come back to this simpler one. But I think the recommended products with imperfectly ranked products are a very interesting research topic. Yeah. Of course, this first order stochastic dominance, this information story is also related to product design in the sense of quality investment, as studied, for example, in Jose's paper with his student. When I invest more, my product's match utility distribution will increase in the sense of first order stochastic dominance. But here I'm telling a information story. Okay. Any questions so far? Good. So in this paper, a general way to capture information improvement is to increase the perceived match distribution from some distribution fx to another distribution gx. And the assumption I'm making is, so xg is a random variable associated with the g distribution, okay? and xf associated with fx. So xg is greater than xf in the increasing convex order, in the sense that this inequality holds for any increasing and convex psi function whenever expectation exists. And the first order stochastic dominance or mean preserving spread are just two special cases of this increasing convex order. So actually, this is very related to the second order stochastic dominance. If you make this psi function an increasing and concave function, then this is just a definition of a second order stochastic dominance. But here is a convex function. So basically, if a decision maker is risk seeking, then that decision maker will prefer the lottery xg over the lottery xf. Okay, that's the meaning of the increasing convex order. So these two are just the two leading examples of the increasing convex order. Here, I also want to point out that there are cases of increasing convex order which are neither first order stochastic dominance nor mean preserving spread. This can happen, for example, when the search pool becomes both more informative and more selective. So you can imagine the following transformation. First of all, you make the inspection more informative. So now the distribution becomes a mean preserving spread. Then you do some truncation from the below. Like you will only recommend some product above some certain threshold. In that case, the final distribution is neither a first order stochastic dominance nor a mean preserving spread of the initial one if the truncation is not too big. Okay, not too big. So this is the main assumption I'm going to keep in this paper. Okay, so basically, as you will see in the following, I'm going to do a comparative static analysis in the Wall framework by changing the distribution from F to G, and to see how will that affect the consumer search behavior, firms' pricing incentive, and the consumer welfare, to see whether we can get some general lessons or not. Yeah. And to guarantee a symmetric equilibrium exists and the search market is active in the sense that consumers will participate into the market in equilibrium, I'm going to make the following two assumptions. So the first assumption, both survivor functions, 1 minus f, 1 minus g, are -1 concave. Okay? So let me explain a little bit. Actually, probably I'm just using a fancy terminology. -1 concavity is just a weaker requirement than log concavity, because usually we just assume log concave, right? That's the most standard assumption in the literature. But actually, -1 concavity is enough. -1 concave just means this function is increasing. So in the Magnum design literature, is very standard, right? This is just as a virtual variation is increasing. Yeah? So this is just a -1 concave assumption. So I'm going to assume both these two functions are -1 concave, and that will guarantee a symmetric equilibrium, and it can be characterized by the first order condition. Okay. And I will also assume that the search cost is less than something. Here, this something VIM is a consumer surplus in the standard monopoly case and the distribution, a certain distribution. Okay, this will just guarantee in equilibrium, consumer will participate into the market. Here, I just want to point one example. This is a Pareto distribution with this CDF. As you can see, if we calculate the reciprocal hazard rate, actually, this is an increasing function, which means 1 minus f is log convex in this Pareto distribution. So that's excluded by lots of search paper because we assume log concave. But if you look at this virtual value, this one, as long as the k is greater than 1, which guarantee the mean of the distribution exists, then actually this one is increasing. So it's -1 concave. So it's perfectly fine for this search model. Okay, this is Pareto distribution. Now, this Pareto distribution is somehow becomes more prominent nowadays because in lots of Bayesian persuasion paper, we find that the consumer optimal distribution will take some version of this Pareto distribution in some sense. Okay, so here I just want to point out for this war search framework, if you consider a larger number of firms, actually this distribution is perfectly fine. You can use. Okay, perhaps some of you already know before. Okay.
Jidong, so can I
Yeah.
ask some
Yes, I did.
question? So, so I'm very interested in this sort of the information order, and so I do so first very the simple question. So do you actually impose the bound on the values? Like do you have like lower bound and upper bound?
So here
Or,
so far I'm not imposing any restriction on the bounds yet. Okay. So the bound, so for example, the upper bound may becomes higher or not. So it depends on which story you are going to tell. Like the truncation example I just mentioned before, in that case, the upper bound should remain the same, right? Actually, I think in most of like a recommendation case, the upper bound should remain the same. Okay. But in the, the truth or noise example, like a more informative inspection case, the upper bound may become higher, right?
All right.
So both cases are
so, okay. So now just let's think about the mean preserving spread. Just like information part. I mean the first part.
Yeah.
And suppose that there's a bound, right? So low bound and upper bound. Let's say 0 and 1. And I mean, if you can imagine the one that's like that's dispersed most, that's actually the binary distribution, right? 0 and 1.
Yeah.
Does it satisfy this? I mean, also you can actually imagine, something like that approximates that binary distribution. Like you have lots of probabilities around 0 and 1, and like very little, in the.
And this assumption may not hold.
That's okay. So it's not going to hold.
So this is,
I see.
This assumption is a restriction. What kind of mean preserving spread will be allowed in my story. Okay.
I see.
Because otherwise we may not have a pure strategy equilibrium if the distribution becomes very dispersed. Okay. So that's ruling out some type of information improvement. Okay.
No, I mean I just ask this question because like if we start from nice distribution, like that's probably fine. But if you also think about like the most like informative case, that's actually like, and then in certain problems like if you think about product design, you may actually want to think about such extreme like distributions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. So for example, in the information story, if the true distribution, for example, is uniform, then if you give the most information, then you still have you just have the true distribution, right? Less information will make them more concentrated, right? But yeah, so this is restricting something. Yes, assumption. Okay. So here's a preview of the main results. As you can see, for some questions, I have relatively good answers. Some I may not have a good answers because in a very general level, both direction we could go. Okay. So for the consumer search duration. So very intuitively, consumer will aim higher, which means they will set a higher reservation match utility when they face a better search pool, but also they will encounter well-matched product more likely at each visit. It's not clear whether they will search longer or shorter. Okay? And I will give you a condition under which that, if G is more dispersed than F in a certain sense, I will make it more clear later, then consumer will definitely search more. Okay? And will confirm such high or low prices in search pool, in the better search pool G. Again, a high reservation match utility will usually lower the market price because the equilibrium price is essentially related to the hazard rate. And when the hazard rate is increasing, the standard most regular case, if the hazard rate is increasing, a high reservation match utility will lead to a low price. By a higher distribution, usually will also make the hazard rate function smaller, so that will increase the market price. And how to resolve this trade-off? So I will give you some answer. For example, when the search cost is very small, I could give you a clear answer, but in general, could be very ambiguous in this case. And will consumers get better off or worse off in search pool G? And the consumer, I will show in many cases, the consumer will indeed become better off. They will become worse off only if price rises significantly. If price remain the same or becomes low, then consumer definitely will become better off. The only reason in my model consumer will become worse off is the market price will increase a lot. Okay. And I will tell you some result which shows that the impact of information improvements are ambiguous when the search cost is small and the upper bounds are the same for the two distribution. So that's a bit related to what Teddy asked before. Okay? And in that case, for example, price will become low, consumer will search less, and they will get better off in the search pool G. But if the search cost is relatively high, then the result can be reversed. Okay. So the equilibrium, I think all of you are very familiar with this War framework and what's the equilibrium. So we need to define some reservation match utility first. Okay. So here the left-hand side is just the expected benefit from one more search. If the best match utility so far is RF, this is a search cost. To solve that, it gives you the reservation match utility. Okay? And when this is, when we have this condition, then the symmetric equilibrium price is determined by this formula. That's why I said before, the equilibrium price is determined by the reciprocal hazard rate. Okay. And when the search cost is less than the consumer surplus in the monopoly case, then the reservation match utility must be greater than the equilibrium price. So this is exactly the consumer surplus in this model. It's positive, the consumer are going to enter the market. Okay, so that's why I need these two assumptions before. Okay? And we can define RG and PG similarly in the search pool G, and the increasing convex order implies RG greater than RF. Remember, because this function is the increasing convex function. And the increasing convex order just means for any increasing convex function, this should be greater for distribution G. Okay, for distribution G. So that's why I'm saying in a better search pool G, consumers will aim higher. Okay, will aim higher. So now let's discuss search duration. There's quite a bit algebra on this slide. Sorry for that. But here I'm introducing something. It seems that people haven't used too much yet in the search literature. But of course, my knowledge is limited. You can tell me whether other papers used this search propensity kind of stuff before. So the search duration in search pool G, F case is 1/1 minus this sigma F. So the sigma F is just, I call it a sigma F, is this one, is the probability a consumer will continue to search at each firm. So I call it the search propensity. Okay? And from the definition of the reservation match utility, you can define the search propensity in this way. So here I'm using this, the quantile density function. And some of you may know the quantile density function is always pretty useful in this type of discrete choice model or search model based on the discrete choice framework. Okay? And from the definition of those RF and RG, these two must be the same. Okay, both of them equal to the search cost. Okay, so now the consumer will search longer in the search pool G if this search propensity is larger. Right? So when this sigma G will be bigger, if this condition holds, if this inequality holds for any sigma, then this sigma g, because sigma g and sigma f will make this equal, which means sigma g must be greater, right? Sigma g is greater means consumer will search longer in the search pool G. Okay, so this gives you a very clear sufficient condition for consumer to search longer in search pool G. And you can rewrite this condition as this one. So basically, this is, oh, if the best match utility so far is at some quantile level, and in the search pool G case, you have a bigger incentive to continue to search. Okay? That's the meaning of this condition. And this condition exactly defines the excess Wells order in the stochastic order literature. Okay? So in the, sometimes people call it like a right spread order. Is used in some economics papers, especially when people study insurance. Okay? It's called excess Wells order. So basically, this result is saying that if the new distribution G is more dispersed than the distribution F in excess Wells order, then consumer will definitely search longer in the search pool G. Okay? How to relate this order to the more familiar one, the mean preserving spread? If F and G have the same mean, then excess Wells order is a stronger condition than the mean preserving spread. Unfortunately, mean preserving spread will not give you a clear-cut comparison result of the search duration. That's just not enough. Okay. So actually, I'm not the first one who discovered this result. In a perhaps not that known paper published a long time ago in Journal of Mathematical Economics. Later on, I noticed that paper. They prove a similar result in one section. Okay, but of course, and Zhou and Smith proved a similar result based on a stronger concept, the dispersive order. Okay, but this is the weakest condition we know that. Under which we have a clear-cut comparison of the search duration.
So this is weaker than dispersive order.
Say it again.
So this is the excess Wells order is weaker than dispersive order. Is that?
Yeah, this is weaker than dispersive order. So dispersive order is stronger than excess Wells order, stronger than mean preserving spread. Yeah.
Just to be clear, Jidong,
yeah,
you didn't make any distributional assumptions to derive this result, and this is sufficient and necessary. Is this both true?
That's a very good question. So it depends on how will you state the result. If you state the result, let's look at this one. Okay, if you state the result, consumer will search longer in the search pool G for any permitted search cost. Then this is the if and only if condition. Okay, but here my statement is for a given search cost. So this is just a sufficient condition. Okay. So this is the first part. Okay. The second part is for search cost is small. When search cost is small, actually you can approximate those reservation match utility or search propensity in a nice way. They can be approximated in this way when this condition is satisfied. If the density at the upper bound is strictly positive, then we can show that consumer will search less in search pool G if the density at the upper bound is greater in search pool G. This result actually is very intuitive. When the search cost is very small, consumer will not stop searching unless they find a product with match utility very close to the top, right? So basically, if the density at the top is very big, which means you will stop searching very likely, more likely. Okay? So they will search less. Okay? The intuition is very simple, but it gives you a very clear prediction when the search cost is small. Okay? Moreover, if we assume that the two bounds of the two distributions are the same, like in the truncation example, or most of the recommendation case, we should not change the upper bound of the matching utility distribution. And if the density at the upper bound are not equal, then we can show that increasing convex order always guarantee that the G density is higher than the F density at the upper bound, so that consumer will search less. Okay, search less. So basically here I'm claiming that if the search cost is very small, and if the two bounds are the same, then the increasing convex order will always lead to less search. That's what I'm claiming in part 2. Okay. So this is the search duration result. Any questions? As I mentioned before, for platform design, this result might be useful if the platform is making money from per-click fees. So now profit and consumer welfare. I still have like 20, no, how many minutes? 15 minutes, something like that, right?
Approximately.
Yeah, okay. So the trade-off for the price or profit and the price is the same thing, because here with infinite number of firms, consumer will always buy. Okay, so let's look at those two prices. They're determined by those reciprocal hazard rate functions. So for a fixed reservation match utility, then if G induce a higher distribution in terms of the hazard rate order, okay, which means when this is greater than that one, then the G will induce a higher price. But we know that RG is greater than RF. So whenever this is decreasing, that's a log concavity case, right? Then that will make this price low. So these two trade-offs just go different directions. But from here, you can also see if you assume this one is log convex, okay, 1 minus G is log convex, then they will work in the same direction. Okay? The price will go up. And another useful way to think about if G is a more dispersed distribution instead of a higher distribution, then actually we can use the search propensity to discuss the intuition in a very nice way. As you can see, the price can also be written as a search propensity. Okay? So basically, they rely on this quantile density function. And we know that the dispersive order, which is also used by some economics paper nowadays, the dispersive order just means the G quantile density function is smaller, which means this is higher. So for a given search propensity, price will be higher in this case. But again, if we have the standard log concavity condition, this is a decreasing function, then again, both forces, the two forces will go different directions. Okay? So that's why we don't have a clear-cut comparison result for price in the very general level. Okay? In the very general level. And you can see the trade-off very clearly by using this formulation. So here are the one of the main results in this part for a general search cost. Okay? So if we introduce a bit of notation, this just gives you the equivalent price. If you use the reservation match utility, this function just gives you the consumer surplus. If you replace X by the reservation match utility, then we can claim these two results. Okay? These two results, I'm not very proud of them because it's very hard to understand what's the economic intuition behind them. But they just looks a little bit similar like the excess wealth order we saw before, right? In excess wealth order, basically this function is a quantile function. But here it's replaced by the reciprocal hazard rate function. And here it's replaced by this virtual value function. But these two conditions, The economic meaning are not that clear. So I apologize for that. I just give you two general conditions without clear economic meanings. So perhaps they are not very useful. Okay. Perhaps the more useful result is the next result when the search cost is small or search cost is big. I can say something. Okay. Of course, a special case is when the information improvement does not change the hazard rate function. Actually, that will be the case in the truncation example, which is often used in the literature, which I will mention again later on. Okay? In that case, the hazard rate remains the same when information improves. So in that case, of course, we will have clear-cut comparison of price and consumer surplus. So here is the small search cost result, result 1. Again, when the density are positive as upper bound for small search cost, price and the profit will be low in search pool G if the density at the upper bound is greater. Remember, this condition also guarantees consumer search less. So consumer will search less. At the same time, price will be low. Here, because the distribution is changing. When the distribution is fixed, usually consumer search less, price will be higher, right? But here the distribution itself is changing, so that we have a positive correlation between search duration and the price. And the consumer will be better off in search pool G if this condition is satisfied. Okay? And the intuition actually is pretty simple. The intuition is, when this density becomes higher at the upper bound, it essentially means, the distribution becomes more concentrated around the upper bound. Becomes more concentrated around upper bound, consumer will stop searching more likely because they will often have a very high draw. But at the same time, like the product differentiation becomes smaller, right? More concentrated distribution is similar like smaller product differentiation. So that's why the price competition will become more intense. Okay, so that's why the price will become low. And this result is when the search cost is sufficiently high. When the search cost is close to the threshold I need in one of my previous assumptions. In that case, consumer will be better off in search pool G if and only if, in the standard monopoly case, they will be better off when the distribution increases from F to G. So until very recently, actually, I'm wondering question, even in the very standard monopoly case, okay, if we change the distribution, either according to the mean preserving spread or the first order stochastic dominance, or more general, the increasing convex order, can we say something general about the price consumer welfare? If you know some paper which studies a monopoly case, if the distribution, for example, like shift in the increasing convex order, can we say something general about the price and consumer welfare? I haven't found any paper yet, but perhaps you know some. If you know, please let me know. Because here I'm not giving you a primitive condition. When will this happen? Okay, in the standard monopoly case, the change of the distribution will make consumer better off or worse off. Okay. So here, let me say one more time about the case when search cost is sufficiently small, and if the upper bound is the same for the two distribution, in that case, we have a clear prediction, which is that profit and the price will be low when information improves, and the consumer will search less, and they will become better off. They will become better off. So in the rest of the talk, I will just give you 3 examples. Okay. So first is a truncation example. As I mentioned before, in this paper about search advertising, this paper about the personalized recommendation, but they all study like the platform design. Okay, but my paper is about exogenous information improvement, but they use a setup of the truncation. Okay, and a property of the truncation, which they didn't explain very clearly in their paper, is that the hazard rate remains the same. So that's a very important feature for their paper to get a very clear-cut price comparison and the consumer surplus comparison result. Because when the hazard rates remain the same, then from the previous discussion, it's very easy to see that we have this result. Consumer will search less, and the price and the profit will go down if 1 minus f is log concave. So basically, that's what they prove in those papers. Okay. However, if 1 minus f is log convex, everything will be reversed. Remember, log convex is allowed in this type of search model, like the Pareto distribution I told you before, right? So it could be entirely reversed. But in either case, no matter log concave or log convex, as long as the increasing convex order, consumer will always get better off. That's what we can prove based on the previous general results in the truncation example. I think for lots of people, when they model the recommendation or like the search advertising, like in search engine, the firm can choose how to match their keywords to consumers. Perhaps the first choice is consider this threshold way. So this is a very intuitive way to model this recommendation thing. Okay. So in this one, I'm giving you a very general prediction what's going to happen. Okay. But of course, if you consider the fees charged by the platform, then of course, many things can be different, especially consumer welfare, right? Because the platform charge fees, so that the equivalent price actually will become higher if the fee affects the marginal cost for the firms. But here, I'm ignoring the platform design part. I'm just studying the price competition foundation part. Because no matter what kind of endogenization you are going to study, eventually you need to study the price competition first. Okay? So based on this truncation example, because this is often used in the literature, including this Eliezer and Spiegler paper, they all have this prediction basically. So that may give the people impression that, oh, information improvement in the search framework often tend to make consumer search less and reduce price. Okay, but actually, of course, here I'm saying, oh, if it's log convex, but everything will be different. But the log convex is usually we call the irregular assumption, right? But now let's still look at the regular case. 1 minus f is log concave. Let's consider this class of beta distribution, a particular beta distribution. Okay. So in this case, when beta decreases, it will increase in the first order stochastic dominance sense. But here, 1 minus f is always log concave. You see this function is decreasing. Okay, it's decreasing. But this example is just show you that even under log concavity, if we use a different way to model information improvement, prediction can be very different. As here you see, when beta decrease, that means information improves, okay? First order stochastic dominance. Price increases.
Not to interrupt, but about 2 to 3 more minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. Just one more example, okay? And the consumer surplus is non-monotonic. Consumer surplus will improve first, then go down. And the search duration is also non-monotonic. So if you want to consider like the optimal information provision in this class of distribution, then for search duration based on per click fee, for example, or consumer optimal design, you will have some interior solution, again, in this class of distribution. This class is very convenient to use because this hazard rate is very simple. So it may help you to study some other problems using this beta distribution example. Perhaps you used it before, but I just am not aware of. Okay. The very last one is just the truth or noise. example we mentioned before, that's for more informative product inspection. So in that case, the search duration will become longer when the signal becomes more informative. Actually, that's generally true for any underlying distribution, okay, giving our assumptions. And the price will go up when the underlying distribution is uniform and the consumer surplus is non-monotonic again, okay, non-monotonic again. So here, basically, let me just summarize, okay. So here I'm modeling information improvement in the search market based on the Wall framework by increasing the match utility distribution in the sense of increasing convex order. It includes first order stochastic dominance and the mean preserving spread. And the consumer aim higher, but they will search longer only if the distribution becomes more dispersed in the sense of excess wealth order, okay? I should use if, not only if, okay, the if. And the impact on profits or price and the consumer welfare are ambiguous in general. However, when the search friction is small and the upper bound is the same, or when the information improvement is modeled by the truncation case setup, then we have some unambiguous impacts. Okay? We can say something. And in particular, I want to emphasize that information improvement can raise the market price significantly and harm consumers. Of course, some of you may push back a little bit. You say, oh, if we give up your search cost condition, and the lesser search cost is not very small, and if the distribution become very concentrated, for example, towards the upper bound because of truncation, then we will go to the diamond paradox case, right? The price will go to almost the upper bound of the distribution, like the monopoly price, and the consumer will never enter the market, in which case, of course, consumer become worse off. And in this paper, basically, I'm saying that, oh, even if the market is still active, okay, consumers still searching, we can still get the result that consumer will suffer from information improvement in the search environment. Of course, this is no longer very surprising based on lots of recent work about Bayesian persuasion in price competition case, when we try to study general, like, information provision to consumers without search friction, and see how that will affect the price competition and market efficiency. And we already know that more information can harm consumers. And Simon also has some work a long time ago about comparative advertising, where you can also see a similar trade-off. More information to consumer, even in the case without such friction, may harm consumers. Okay, may harm consumers. I think I will stop here. Yeah.
Perfect. Everyone is kind of feel free to ask questions as they come to you.
So maybe, hi, Jose here. I would like to ask this question. More information can hurt consumers. Is this possible, or for this you really need to have the mean preserving spread kind of case, or you can also get it with the FOSD?
Yeah, that's what you see here, right?
In this case, is FOSD, right?
Yeah.
And you could still.
Or in this case, when 1 minus f in the truncation case is log convex. Yeah, I can also have. So it's not only about the mean preserving spread.
Right. So because I didn't look at this kind of case in my paper, no, where I was looking at the increases in quality, which are basically bring FOSD
first order
shifts.
dominance.
Exactly, FOSD shifts of the distribution, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't look at what happens to quality, but you say that to consumer surplus.
Yeah.
I could see that the price actually could indeed increase or decrease.
Yeah.
And some of the results you have mentioned appear there. But consumer surplus could also even go down, despite, for example, having more quality. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, that I mentioned before. I said in your quality investment case, it's just an alternative story. But I kind of forgot, how do you model quality investment? The cost is per unit or fixed cost?
It's a fixed cost.
It's a fixed cost. So that's exactly like the same as here.
Yes.
The same as here. But I forgot whether you discussed the consumer surplus result or not.
No, actually not. What I did.
Yeah, that's that's my impression when I read the paper a few days ago. I told you I don't know that paper actually, because I missed all the consumer search workshop during the past few years. You obviously you presented there. Yeah. So in your case, actually, yeah, quality like improvement in terms of the quality investment can harm consumers.
I see. Okay, I'll have a look at this more carefully. Yes.
It could be something to say. I'm not sure. But that's not the focus of your paper, of course. Yeah.
No, one is no, correct. It was different. Yes. And you said
Jidong.
Yeah.
No, please.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks. This is so we know that these models are complicated, and it's very hard to do. Very hard to get like clear comparative status result, right? So, but you had some clear results, right? So in particular, analysts like this if you have the excessive worst order, then sometimes you can actually what's it about the duration, right? So there was about the search duration. So apparently, you have there are clear result for search duration when you have the excess worst order.
Yeah.
And so two things. So first, like, can you actually explain to us, like, so like what is really the excess worst order? How can you think about it? Like, we have good understanding about like mean presumption spread, and also like dispersive order has also nice intuitive interpretation, right? But can you?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So the excess Wells order, the intuition behind it, it's not as clear as if we use a dispersive order, because basically dispersive order give you like a rotation. Moreover, is a monotonic rotation. Okay, like the quantile difference between the two distribution will increase, right? The dependent variable increase. So that gives you a very clear concept. It becomes more dispersed in a clear sense. So excess Wells order is not that clear. It does not require the monotonic part. Okay? But still, yeah, I don't have a very intuitive way why it can be a little bit weaker than dispersive order. Probably I should also think a little bit more about that. What do we have a relatively precise intuition for that? Yeah, I will think more
that's
about
fine.
that.
Like it was like it's nice that this is actually the first time I actually have heard about this particular order, but it's good to know, like, because I was very excited about like learning about dispersive order, because it allows us to say something clearly. So that's actually what so I just wanted to understand better like what's going on. And second is, so what about if you actually like apply dispersive order like to all these results? So all the results are gonna be like the for price, and also like the welfare. So still we are going to have ambiguous result for both price and
in which case I didn't hear the first part.
So what about if you compare? Just what about if you use like stronger concepts like dispersive order, like F and G?
Yeah,
they are ordered they are ranked in dispersive
Okay,
order.
in dispersive order, for example, can we say
Yes.
anything about the price and the consumer welfare?
Can you make things better? Like,
I thought about it because I think I can easily give you some example.
Okay.
Where you can go either way. For example, this truth or noise is just one example of dispersive order. This must give you dispersive order. But you can see the consumer surplus, at least in the non-monotonic. Okay, price here is monotonic, but I think it's not that hard to find a counterexample. Even on the dispersive order, we have non-monotonic price and the consumer welfare. Yeah,
I see. No,
but that's a good way to think about it. Whether dispersive order may give you some. Yeah.
Like the things that I mean, you have some nice, sufficient conditions, but I just want to know, like, so what set of like regulatory assumptions are going to allow us to, say something, make some, clear predictions,
exactly.
Right? Because I think that's going to help.
That's also what I wanted to do in the very beginning, whether we can say something very general and clear, but end up with, this not very satisfactory shape or status. Only in some situations we can say something clear, but at the general level, like, seems hard. Seems hard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So did you look at the case that is discussed in the paper by Simon, just like where you have a multiplicative form where the match value is just multiplied by a parameter? That might be a nice example to look at.
Yeah. So that's the mean preserving spread case, right? If you assume if you normalize the mean to 0, because in that type of model we can always normalize the mean to 0, right? Doesn't matter giving the infinite number of firms here, okay? Or you assume no outside option, like what Simon did, okay? So that belongs to the mean preserving spread class. I need to remember, perhaps Simon, you can tell me what's the welfare result I remember you did some comparative static analysis with respect to that parameter, right? I need to double check. Yeah, I cited a paper in my paper, but I read that paper when I was a PhD student. So I cannot, perhaps I need to go back to double check what result they have.
I think it was only about the price. Actually, that it was ambiguous. The impact was ambiguous.
On the price?
On the price. I don't remember about consumer surplus. But yeah, Simon might remember better.
No, I'm afraid I don't have
even longer time.
Even longer since I read it. Yeah.
I remember about the price, but not about consumer surplus.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Price, I know. Yeah.
But the one thing I want to mention a little bit is that the alternative way to model the information improvement is to assume like some consumers know the match utility before search, some don't. Perhaps that's another way, like Simon and Rena did in another paper. Okay, but like that's another way to model information improvement. I just didn't talk about this.
Yeah,
slide.
no, I like that one too.
Oh, okay.
I've been thinking about that one recently. Yes, good. Oh, so yeah, I was sort of wondering had you mentioned that, but I thought you were going there at first. But no, I'm very happy to see that one there. Okay. And you're pushing the boundaries of product differentiation again in this work, what we know about it. So it's
a little bit.
Very, very nice. Well, no, all it's
yeah.
Well, you're being too modest there, I think.
So I'm gonna cut the recording here. Thank you for an amazing presentation, but everyone can stay and continue to ask questions as they go.